Hello, and welcome to another edition of Liquid Health News. I am your host, Jefferson Nunn, and this episode is sponsored by Salt Care and Biotoxin Foundation. So, we have a lot of news for you today. We're finding out that algae bloom can cause a lot of deadly and dangerous toxins to be disseminated through the air. So algae that can be found almost everywhere. A certain species of algae can cause the air to become toxic. And this is the toxin called anatoxin, ATX. And that's the one that if you start to breathe it, you could end up dead very quickly. And what they're finding is that as the climate becomes a little bit warmer, this type of algae is becoming more predominant. So this is something that's definitely not good and something that we should research more. We're also finding that toxic chemicals that are in food grade gloves, and this is what we require everybody throughout the entire food industry to use, are the toxic compounds that are in those gloves are spreading to food. And they're saying that, well, this is why we have to be careful where we get the gloves, but also it's a concern that these chemicals, phenol, can cause cancer if ingested. So this is another instance where what we're breathing and what we're eating are having hazardous effects on our health. And the last article up for bid today is that in Michigan, they're concerned about PFAS contamination in fish and game. And how did the plastic get there in the first place? Well, it turns out that the water runoff from landfills and from other places, they run off into these lakes, they run off into basically our food supply. And then we eat it. And then it stays with us for the rest of our lives, causing hormone problems, immunity problems, cancer, and death. So we're finding that our environment is contaminated by a variety of toxic chemicals, and there is insufficient support. There's insufficient attention. There is insufficient monitoring, and there is insufficient, well, everything on this. And so, what can we do? Well, we can try to keep the air clean. We can try to keep the water clean. But when it comes to food, we typically go to the supermarket and we try to buy what we think is good quality food. But what happens when the food that we're buying is not good? It's pretty pretty awful. In the meantime, we can go to the questions. What type of bread bases can have less mold? So typically, if you source, metal bases can be good and they're easy to clean and to inspect. The problem with the fabric-based bread bases is then when you look underneath it, it's a lot harder to determine if that's clean. And then there's another question of, what happens, what causes the twitching, throughout the body, in the legs and in the arms, which makes it very difficult to sleep, and it's very painful and so forth. What causes that? It can be hormone imbalances, it can be thyroid, it can be neurological issues as well, for example, strokes. And, that can be, there's just a wide variety of things that can cause it. And the only thing that we can try to do is just to have clean air, clean food, clean water. There's some medicines that can help, but it's limited. Over the upcoming weeks, we're going to try to get a few more people on the air. One is an author that I've been attempting to reach out to. And if anybody happens to have a good contact number for this author, I would greatly appreciate it. But the book is called Kill Shot, and that's a rather generic title, but because there's a few books that come up with that and so forth. But the author is Jason Deeren, and it's published by Penguin Random House. And it goes over what these pharmacists in a compound pharmacy did. And it's a very, very intense read. And this just highlights, I think, some of the problems that we have as an industry dealing with this. And that's just one book that's gone over this subject recently. Also in the upcoming weeks, I plan to interview people that have been affected by mold, and they're doing something about it. They're reaching out to their lawmakers all over the world and demanding change. So we're going to interview them and talk about their experiences and talk about, what they have learned in this process. And again, if there's any questions or any subject that y'all would like us to cover, or if there's anybody you would like us to interview, please go onto our Facebook group or go onto our website and reach out to us. We'll be glad to do what we can with this. Again, my name is Jefferson Nunn, and I'm your host for Liquid Health News. Have a good one.